Welcome to today's episode of Just Call Dad. I get to sit down with Matt, who has so many things to tell us today about what it means to be untethered and how we can live in this busy world in a better way. Here on Just Call Dad, we're creating a team of dads who are just a call away, who are also working each and every day to better themselves one single choice at a time. Matt, how are you today?
I'm really good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. I had an opportunity today to spend some time with the family, which has been nice, and I've been able to go out in the snow and play a little bit. Here in Ohio, we got a little bit of snow, so that was cool. The kids acted more excited for that than Christmas. What's the weather like there today?
So it's cold. It's like 30 degrees here in Maryland. It's supposed to snow tonight, and I guess through the weekend and the beginning of the week. Of course, I live just north of Baltimore, and we never get the snow we want. So we get just enough snow to make it nasty outside and muddy, and never enough to play with. So I'm hoping that this snow tightens that up a little bit, and I get to go take my boys out and go make some snowmen or something.
Well, I have two important questions. One, not important at all, but one that is important. First one is, living by Baltimore, do you root for the Ravens? Are you a football fan at all?
So I'm not as much a football fan as I used to be. I'm a hockey fan. But yeah, I mean, I put the game on last week. So from time to time I'll jump in. I just don't follow it as much as I used to. I went down the hockey road probably 4 or 5 years ago now, and the funny thing is, Maryland doesn't have a hockey team, so I'm actually a Philadelphia Flyers fan.
Now that's kind of random, but I love it. I also was just making sure that you weren't too big of a Ravens fan because they stole the Browns franchise, the team that I root for, and won the Super Bowl the following year. So that I just want to make sure, before we got started, that we got to the bottom of that so that we could, deal with any issues we might have moving forward. And I'll be honest with you, the Browns are terrible, so we really don't. You wouldn't have an issue, right, at
Yeah,
all.
it's not a loss for us anymore.
Right. So, second question I have, much more serious, is you talk about playing with your kids. So, this is the Just Call Dad podcast. We've got a lot of dads in our community that are just excited. I was just talking today with a dad who has a free community for dads to join for accountability for the new year. And we have so many things that are coming our way in the new year. So, tell us a little bit about your dad's story. Who are you as a dad? Who is Matt, the dad? And what does that look like for you?
So as a dad, I have a 6-year-old and a 5-year-old. They're both boys. Um, my first son was born back in 18, and shortly after he was born, I deployed to Afghanistan for a few months. And while I was there, well, the first week I got there, I found out my wife was pregnant with our second kid. Uh, so I became a dad of two. One in the tank pretty quickly. So I knew I wanted to be more engaged as a dad than when I grew up. Not to say my dad was a bad dad, but we didn't do a lot of stuff. I didn't play sports as a kid. We tried. He put me in stuff, but he let me quit like the first week. Um, so kind of like by the time I had my first son, I was a technical sergeant in E6. So I was already starting to get my first gray hairs as a human being in my 20s, but I was getting that gray hair from some of my time. So I knew I wanted to like kind of pass on what I was as a leader in my service and like convert that to dad mode. A little bit of stoicism, and I really wanted to prove to myself and my kids that you can do more. I didn't graduate high school. I got a GED later on. My dad didn't graduate. My mom didn't graduate. So one of the things that was super important to me was setting a platform for my kids of like, no, you can do more. So I ended up finishing my bachelor's degree in cybersecurity a couple years ago. And my wife also has a degree. So, a huge part of like me being a dad is like not saying you have to go achieve that. I don't care if you get a degree, to be honest. I think trades are amazing and all that stuff. And probably more beneficial than a lot of stuff is now. But that kind of like, basically me as a dad is like, I'm constantly trying to edge forward and trying to just like set a standard that's really high for myself. And then just, whatever version of that my kids want to do, I'm cool with, as long as we're going outside and we're having fun and we're not burning up time.
I think that's cool to hear. Just in the small amount of time you were able to share that whole story, your story of really discovery of what's important versus what's not important. And as a dad, one of our main roles, from what I hear you saying, is setting realistic expectations for ourselves and our kids. Not putting ourselves in a scenario where you're like, you have to do this, or if you don't do this, then this will happen, but at the same time creating a firm expectation that you're going to hold yourself to the same standard that you're holding for them. And I think just in the short amount of time that we got a chance to hear your story, it's not only one of redemption, but also one of really never giving up. And I find that intriguing because oftentimes the most impactful people are not the people with the most degrees behind their name. They are the people who never quit and gave up. And so, as you went through that process and began to learn, okay, I'm a dad of not only one, but of two. I'm deployed, which has its own set of pressures and expectations. I'm sure the expectations rose inside of you in a good and a bad way, probably a healthy way and an unhealthy way. So, what is one way that you now cope with some of the stress that you feel from being a dad in the ways that the pressure brings, good and bad? How do you deal with that and maybe tie that into your mindset that you've adopted?
Okay, so my live untethered adventure mindset. I really started to shift that just probably 6 months ago or less. So what I realized was that I wasn't managing my stress well. I'd get angry all the time, and like I'd go to work and I would just be shutting down the way in and the way back. And I'm like, I had to convince myself to like be happy when I got home. Not that my kids weren't making me happy or my wife, but like I needed to like kind of like get away from being so focused on who I am as a master sergeant or as a senior NCO in the military, and take the best qualities of what I've gained and apply them to being a dad and let the rest go. Um, so that's a huge part of that process for me. But as I was trying to figure out how to like manage my stress, I'm like, I didn't grow up going outdoors. I love being outdoors now. Um, so when I'm starting to feel overwhelmed as a dad, the first thing I do is I'm like, okay, well, I'm in my house with two boys who are wild animals. Why are we not outside? And so the first thing I do is boys, go put the shoes on, go bring some jackets. I keep an extra bag under my seat of my truck with the spare clothes because I like to just be driving down the road and go find a river or a creek and just pull over and be like, kids, go get in the water. I don't even care what you're wearing. I always keep backup clothes. We're gonna go get in this water. I literally keep a little rinse kit in the back of my truck and I'll just spray them off when I'm done. Um, I found that when I'm feeling overwhelmed with my kids, the first thing I want to do is immediately go egress out of my house and go find somewhere to go hike, walk, get get wet, get muddy. I don't care. Um, and it is a perpetual therapy for me. It's a perpetual therapy, and then my kids just eat it up.
I want to talk about something that you just mentioned. So, psychologically speaking, when our brains are stressed, we experience that fear flight mechanism in our brain. It sounds to me like you are almost utilizing that reaction that your brain has, but you're channeling it into going outdoors. The emotion that you have of feeling trapped indoors is a very common emotion, especially for a lot of dads that don't want to share about it, whether it's trapped in a job, trapped in a situation, and they often feel guilty. I know I've dealt with this where you're like, I'm happy, but I'm not happy. Right. And I think that's something that we all need to utilize this podcast episode to really evaluate what are the sources of the stress, not necessarily what do I have to do? And so, what you choose to do with that source is you choose to redirect. So, you feel that fear flight emotion, and your kids are feeling the same thing, and you're teaching them the healthy coping mechanism of let's get outside instead of let's internalize. So, it's almost as I listen to you, almost a story or like a metaphorical connection to what's actually going on internally and externally. So, I think that's such a cool thing. So, tell me more about what got the phrase untethered to be tied into that. I like the wording, and I just want to know more about that.
Okay, yeah. So untethered, my wife and I was like, hey, we need to do something together. We need to create some kind of product, business, something. Not necessarily for the money, but we need to focus on something together, her and I. It's you as a dad, your life with your children is so important, but in a marriage, it's so important to take time for just you and your wife too. Um, and so, uh, what I realized was kind of like what I was saying before. I had been so focused on Master Sergeant Matt, um, and there were so many times where she would come home and she was Human Resources Jen. That's my wife's name. Um, and what we realized was like when we got home, we were still connected. Like whether it was checking our work emails and all this stuff, and then I'd come in and I'm like, I get, as a military member, I get tons of phone calls and emails from troops and stuff like that, and they're always like, "Hey, I need this, whatever." Like just today, I'm off today. I had 3 or 4 messages from people asking for help with things. Well, it's really hard to disassociate myself from my rank and my position um, when you're constantly being contacted. But what I found was, when you're tethered, you're tied together, right? Kind of like tethered souls or whatever the case. That tethering is when you're just the two things become one. And as much as I want my marriage to be tethered, I want my relationship with my children to be tethered, and I want my relationship with Christ to be tethered. My relationship with society, I don't want tethered. I don't want the things on social media to be a part of my day and my emotions and my mindset. I don't want um, the stresses I have at work to be impacting my mental or my physical health. And they have. I mean, I have massive gray. You can't really see it, but I have massive gray patches on the side of my head, and they've literally come and burst based on events. Um, and all of these culminating things have really, really taken a toll on me as a person. And that was kind of like it just kind of hit one day. We're like, well, we talk about being tethered all the time and how important that is, but being untethered is unbelievably important. So when I leave the house or whatever I'm doing, I'm not checking my phone anymore. I throw my kids in the back, or sometimes just my wife or just me. I have a truck with a cap on it. I throw a fireplace or a fire pit and a mattress, and I will literally go drive. And we will check out in the mountains and disconnect and live untethered.
I wonder if anybody listening to this can attest and connect to the tethered feel, because I know I can, and I also can connect to the physical emotions and physical responses that our body has to stress. I recently went through the same type of thing where I was having physical symptoms that no doctor could explain. They couldn't, I would get tests run or things done and they would say, yeah, you're fine. And I wouldn't be fine. And I've talked about this with several guests now. I talked about one of my guests who does breath work, which was so cool because he said, hey, I can use breath work to actually get to the bottom of some of the things that I'm
Wow.
doing. And I have been. I've been doing it daily as a routine, just the routine that he taught me. And I'm learning that the things that I feel are not always the emotions that I have. And so I do a lot in my writing with kids' books and with people that I work with on trying to disconnect, and I guess the word we could use is untether our feelings from our emotions. And I like that. And I want to utilize your thought and share that it's from where you're at because I love that. Can we untether our feelings and our emotions? And I think we can. I truly believe that if we can do that for our kids, specifically our kids that are going through something, just to kind of give an anecdote and then tie into a story for you. My oldest daughter right now is giving us a lot of, let me say it this way, blessings. I feel they're burdens, but they're blessings. And what I mean by that is she's testing my patience, she's testing my strength, and honestly, I'm not really sure she's even aware that she's doing those things, but I'm hyper aware of that. And I find myself tethered to my feelings when my daughter is yelling at me, or my daughter is not listening and not doing the things that I know would be so easy to just pick the sock up off the floor, yet it's a battle. And I find myself tethered to the feeling of anger or tethered to the feeling of frustration. And I love this concept of how can we untether from our feelings and begin to have the emotions that are healthier that we know we need to have. And I wonder, have you as a dad had that experience with your kids as well, or am I alone?
So, if I remember correctly, your oldest daughter is, I think, the same age as mine.
Yeah, she is.
Okay,
Yeah.
so yes. So my oldest son has severe ADHD, and I grew up with it. I actually just got diagnosed um, a year ago. Um, Now I knew I had it uh, because the backstory there was I actually got diagnosed when I was a kid. They gave me an experimental drug, and I had a heart palpitation in elementary school. And so they cut it off, flushed it down the toilet, and moved on. And they took it off my record. So um, my son has it, and he was just recently. We've been going through the motions of trying different medications, and my wife and I, we fought really hard. We were like, well, we don't want to do stimulants at first, right? We want to do we cut out red dye, we cut out dyes and food coloring from all our food probably a year and a half ago, and that helped tremendously with behaviors. Tremendously, it was a night and day difference, but I still struggle with them. Um, there was a point where this was probably 4 months ago, where I had meetings. This is like super candid, but I had meetings at the school, and they were like, "You should see if he needs therapy to figure out how to like sort out all of this emotion this kid has, and and how big how big his emotions go." And anybody who has ADHD, especially on the more severe spectrum, I've learned that ADHD is considered neurodivergence. So it falls into the same umbrella as things like autism and all these other things. Now they're different. They are different streams, but they're all under the same umbrella of what's considered neurodivergence. And I'm learning about it for myself and my benefit, but I'm learning about it for my son, and he just wears me out. And there's times where I'm like, I can't disassociate my frustrations with what's happening. And like there's times where I catch myself and I'm like, whoa, you need to stop and slow down. Hey Jen, come over here. I need you to handle him. I need to walk away because I am about to explode. Um, and thankfully I have a wife that, 90% of the time she's paying attention, and she goes, oh no, I need to go get him. And she'll see that I'm spiraling because my other son's nothing like me. This son is a spitting image of me, which I have a difficult personality, and so does he. So if you yell at him, he's like, and he postures. Like he doesn't get scared. He doesn't cry. My other one, you're like, don't do that. And he's like, oh, and he, so, and that's part of dad, right? Is figuring out each child is a completely different human being. But yeah, no. So I've had to like learn practices from like I have a motorcycle, so I know like when I'm getting wound up over a week's period of time, especially if I can handle the weather, I'll go get on the bike for a little while, and that might be therapy. Or I might just go hit the river or hike for 20 minutes, even if it's just 20, 30 minutes. And that's usually like a coping mechanism for me to unwind and like reappreciate everything around me. Like this beautiful world that I live in is all here. It's all been created for me, my family, and everyone around me. And that like helps me kind of untether those emotions because I get angry. I'm an angry guy. I'm joined the military, right? Like I didn't have an easy pathway to get here.
Well, I
So
think that's important to just kind of pause there and tell the dads that are listening to this. Sometimes, and I'm on social media and it's created a connection with you. It's created a connection with all my guests. It's amazing for that. But there's a pressure that comes with social media. You'll get on there and you'll see a dad account, maybe a influencer who is well intended, but like the things they're sharing make you feel less than and make you feel like, wait, well, no, I don't think I can do that. I feel this way, or or you start trying to do what they're asking and you find yourself more anxious and more stressed and more frustrated because you're like, well, no, I don't want a standard to live up to. And that's kind of why I started Just Call Dad, is to kind of, to use a football term, kind of stiff arm that mindset of say, no, I don't want to get on here and talk about all the good things that we're doing as dads. I want to talk about all the emotions that we're feeling and be okay. Like maybe there's a dad that hears this podcast and is like, oh, it's okay that I got upset. It's just not okay that I remain that way. And I think
yeah,
a lot of times, Matt, what happens to guys like you and guys like me who for our whole life have had these issues that we have labeled as issues or not even known how to label on it, but our emotions have been told to us as something that we should not have or we should change or that we should try to adjust or fix. But in the reality, maybe they're our greatest strength because if you hadn't walked through the things you'd walk through, you might not be as equipped to raise the son that you have. And I think that's so cool to think about that yes, you feel those frustrations, but you're also demonstrating for him how to handle them in a healthy way. So I would say kudos to you because I know Lauren, my wife, has often heard the call of, Lauren, I need you, please. And she knows the tone in my voice means I'm about to explode. And I'm not that kind of dad. I don't want to be. I want to be the dad that plays with my kids and has fun. And sometimes I put pressure on myself that everything has to be perfect, when actually them seeing me mess up is what was needed all along. And I wonder too, and this is where I want to talk about your apparel that you're doing. I wonder if that tangibility to wearing apparel can really help somebody remain untethered in those moments where they feel that way. Talk to us about what got you into that apparel idea. What can we do as dads physically to put on our body maybe as a reminder to not be tethered?
So, the hoodie I'm wearing, it's a glow in the dark Untethered Adventure. This is real dark. I can do a white one too, but um, for me, so it's kind of like when you put your wedding ring on, right? Or you put your favorite ball cap on. Um, Sometimes it just kind of makes you feel at home. Um, and uh, you know, I'm priding myself in what my wife and I are creating, and um, I think being able to just don something or put something on that stands for something when you go to put it out of your drawer, right? You go to take a t-shirt out of your drawer, you take a regular white t-shirt or a black t-shirt, and you're like, oh, this is a really comfortable fitting shirt. Um, but you usually look at it, right? You pick a shirt and you look at it, you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to wear that where I'm going, or whatever the case. Well, if you're going to go grab one out and you see one that literally says like live for what matters, the shirt that's back here, with the fireplace, it's a family of four sitting around a fireplace, the mountains in the background. As I'm going to pull that out of my drawer, maybe I woke up in a bad mood, haven't had my coffee, or as you and I both know, both of my house has been sick, my wife's sick again. um so like there's one of those things where it's like I can go open the drawer and I go to grab a shirt out and I grab the shirt that says live for what matters, and it's like I'm not going to read it when I put it on, but maybe that's a reminder to the people walking behind me, and help them too. It's like, oh man, you know what? I should be living for what matters. Why did I wake up this morning stressed about work and I'm not even there yet? I have a family right in front of me. I'm going to work because I need to get paid, not because that matters anymore. And that's not to say, I'll lean into this repeatedly, but like my job's important. I'm a deployment manager. I make sure people get to and from the uh, trips and deployments and all that stuff safely. Make sure they're taken care of. All the equipment's there. So it's really important what I'm doing. I do believe that, but it's not nearly as important as my kids. Our next generation and my wife. If she's not happy and healthy and she's not living for what matters, how can I? It's got to be a joint effort. And the times that her and I have had struggles in our marriage and stuff like that, what I found was there was no yin and yang. So that both of us were living for our jobs or living for problems and not living for what mattered. So you got to have that balance. Not everybody's going to be in a great place. Your wife needs to be there for you, and you need to be there for her. And your kids, you need to be there for them all the time. Um, but yeah, I just think being able to pull that shirt out and read something like "Live for What Matters" or "Live Untethered," just that like brief reminder, sometimes is enough. Um, it's like for Christians, right? They look up and they walk into the living room, they see a cross on the wall, and it's like, just that brief reminder. Oh yeah, this isn't about me. Um, or whatever religion that is, right? Buddha, on whatever the case might be. But there's just those little symbols around your life. So when you go to open that drawer and you're like, oh yeah, I, what am I doing? Why am I mad about whatever's happening? I'm not supposed to be mad about that. I'm not supposed to be investing energy and whatever it is into this. It's just not. And so that's kind of the idea of the brand. I have another collection that I'm trying to roll out right now, which is extremely close to my heart, which is ADH Dad and ADH Kid. Um, and that is to bring a lot more awareness and reminder to myself and the people wearing it about ADHD and how hard it can be, and to remember that you can celebrate that instead of make it look like a symptom and a problem.
I like it. I think that's cool. We made these shirts. This is my emblem or my logo. It's D with the O1. It means days are limited, opportunities are limitless or unlimited. I made these shirts in our basement. We make them for everybody. My wife makes onesies for people. We just decided to do that when I was going through some things and we were trying to respond to how we felt about our daughter and what was going on with the NICU experience. And once we got through all the tough part, we wanted to have like a physical reminder. So I made shirts. I had no idea what I was making them for to start. I had no idea it would end up in a podcast. It would end up in writing books. I just wanted to make something to wear, like you said, that meant something. We had no intention to sell them or do anything with them. We just wanted them for us. And we are kind of rolling out something where we're doing that as well. But we're actually beginning to kind of partner with people as well. It's funny you share that. Like, could the D be slapped on somebody else's thing to represent, that idea of like this untethered mindset with like it's almost like a brand, if that makes sense, that supports
Yeah.
other brands. And so we actually I got pretty blessed by finding a apparel company here like that's in the same neighborhood as we are, and they have like 40,000 followers on Instagram in a big circle, and I had no idea. And they've made some shirts, and we were able to pay them and bless them, and they can make shirts for us and ship them for us. And we haven't like gone down that yet because we haven't had time, but there's so much power in creating apparel that someone else can get. You just never know. You have to figure out why would someone want to buy it, right? And I think the thing is, what you're doing now and what I'm doing now is telling the story behind it. Because if you see that shirt now, if someone sees that and understands that untethered and what that means, there's a team mentality behind that. There's a mentality that says, hey, I'm part of this. And somebody else is wearing the same shirt, even if I've never met them before. Even if I've never been through what they've been through, they're there with me. There's something powerful about that apparel. And so I guess for me, I'm excited to hear about this new collection that you have with the ADHD collection. As an educator, as someone who has been diagnosed with that myself, as somebody who sees the effects of that in my own life, I think that's very powerful. And I think sometimes that label can be one that's very tough to handle. And then this concept that you and I talked about too of creating books, apparel, mindsets, things that people can tangibly take with them as a visual reminder that you are not alone, you are enough, and you are special. And I love that concept. And so then I guess where I would like to really finish our podcast today, so we can get down to the bare bones of life for you and for me. How are you going to take this mindset, this untethered mindset, this apparel, and how are you going to kind of expand this so that more people can hear about your mission? What is your vision for 2025?
Okay. So you want to start from the top, work through the ADHD thing, and get down to that?
I do. I want to start from there. I want to go down. I want to say, okay, here's Matt. Here's where Matt is today, and he's got this passion. Where does Matt think this is going to go in a year's time, in 5 years' time? What would be your dream?
So I think my dream would be, so I have 13. I'm in my 14th year in the military. Um, I don't want to do plus 20. I want to do 20, and I want to be done. It has been good to me in a lot of ways, but I'm worn out in ways that I shouldn't have to be at my age. And I'm okay with that because I'm proud of what I've done for the most part. So um, 2025 for me looks like um, really kind of trying to make Untethered a almost like the intent was a community. The intent was never to make a bunch of money off of the shirts. But what my long term goal is that this becomes something that, kind of like you were saying, people are proud to wear it. They feel like they're part of the community when they're wearing it, and that I make a little bit of supplemental income in the process. So, at the end of this year, 2025, I'd really like for it to be self propelled in the sense that, my the brand name and the mindset is something that's just kind of openly discussed, right? Like they're on social media, or I have a YouTube channel that's really, really small. I make some goofy stuff, I make some serious stuff. I'm a combat lifesaver qualified person, so I teach that sometimes, things like that for medical and stuff. Um, so my goal is to expand this year. Um, I didn't launch YouTube until the end of October. Um, so my goal was to just expand all of those communities and just get people connected. And I found in my career that mentorship is probably one of the most valuable things you'll ever gain in your life is mentors. Not all of them are permanent. Some of them are part time. Some of them last 2 years, or some of them are one experience. So the goal, kind of like the same. I mean, I'm really glad we're having this conversation because we have the exact same intent here, and is what I seem. I really want these communities to meld together. And this year, my goal is really, really to fortify a community of people who want to live untethered, teach each other, hey, how to get out there, how to get outside, how to explore. I can't tell you how many families have a 6-year-old daughter or a 5-year-old daughter and have never been camping. And they think it's overwhelming because they don't know what to buy or what to do. So I want to create those segues that help bring families and young dads and moms who are like, are from the city and don't even understand what it's like to be outside. That's really, really important to me this year. Really important is to start pulling more families, not just dads, but for me, because I make, some kid shirts and stuff like that too, but is to pull families in and get them outside and just do something different. Just do something different. It's the greatest therapy I've ever had.
I
Um,
like that phrase, just do something different. That's good. That's really, really good. I should connect you with my buddy Ethan Rich, who has a company called Barely Nomadic, which he's doing apparel to talk about getting out in your local area. You guys would be awesome as like a collaboration team because he's in the South. You guys are, kind of like we're like in between me and where he is. We're in Ohio. He's down in Alabama. And so it's kind of interesting to think about all that stretch of space there, and really how we could talk about it at different areas doing different things. But the most creative thing you can actually do is just open your front door or open your back door and go outside. And I know it sounds simple, but I think a lot of people don't realize that it is that easy. And so I can't wait to help you be part of my team. And what I mean by that is I just get a bunch of guys together at no cost to me, to them, to anybody, and we just create this team where we are trying to attack life on purpose. And what we do is we just figure out ways for everybody to win. We want every single person in here to win because if you win, I win. And if I win, you win. It's like this constant back and forth. And we teach people in the community that it's about giving to each other because at the end of the day, it's not about monetary value, it's about personal connection. And that's really what I hear you saying. No matter if it's getting outside, reading a book, spending time with your kids, whatever you're choosing to do, it should be a valuable thing where you're surrounding yourself with other people who are doing that as well. So if I want to find you, how do I do that? I mean, outside of finding a link maybe through my store now because we've connected, how would someone find Matt?
so on YouTube, it's Untethered Adventure Media.
Okay.
On Instagram, it's just untethered_adventure. You can also, if you find, I'm on Shop Pay, the website is, which has a contact for my email and my social medias. Shopify is my main storefront. You can also contact me there. The whole intent. I have a Facebook page, also Untethered Adventure. Um, but the intent is, even if you go to the store, I don't care if you buy something, but there's a connection there. And
Hmm.
I intend on moving part of my URL over and creating basically a blog-esque thing, but I don't want it to just be me talking at people. I want it to be community talking. So that's coming in the future, probably February, March timeframe. Um, I just got to make sure the dust has settled in other parts of my life. But yeah, so you can find me on any of those social media platforms. And please feel free. They can always like we talked through Instagram DMs, on Threads too. Same thing on Untethered Adventure. Um, I engage often and regularly. I think that listening to other people's insights are amazing. One thing, Chief Ricky Davis, who was I was a volunteer firefighter for a little while, and he had told me the day you think you know everything, you'll get somebody else hurt or killed. Um, and that is way more expansive than firefighter or military. That is extremely expansive to life. Um, so we need to listen more than we talk.
I
And
think that's the goal of the podcast, right? We want people to hear this. We want people to hear our story and just listen, right? I think that's such a good goal. And getting outside, it requires you to listen because you can get in nature and hear things. So I can't wait, to be honest with you, to not only share this adventure with you alongside you now that our stories have crossed and we can help each other, but also for other people to find you who might just be one podcast away from making a big change. And it's my hope and my prayer that that's what this becomes. And so I can't wait for, if you're listening to this, for you to connect with Matt and to become more untethered, for that YouTube page to grow, for his Instagram to grow. I'm excited for 2025 and I am ready to live untethered myself. So Matt, I just want to say thank you for your time today. Thank you for teaching me what it means to be untethered. And you better believe I'm going to work on it intentionally throughout 2025.
All right, thanks, Sean. I really appreciate your time, man. I really appreciate you letting me get my message out there, and I'm happy to hear more about your endeavors too. So
Yeah,
I'll be on the lookout for some of those books you have. You sent me that link,
we'll
and
do.
hopefully I'll have a book which I'm going to link up with you about
That's right.
your publishing stuff because I actually I'm probably almost done writing it. So
Let's go.
that's definitely something that I'll have to get with you on. So
I'd love to. That's actually one of my life missions, is to help other people write stories too, not just me. I just have this weird thing where I just like helping people. It's like my favorite thing. I'm realizing that it gets me more joy than even doing it myself. So I
yeah,
can't wait to help you.
I really do love that, man. I do the same thing. Sometimes it hurts me though, for the
Yep.
audience listening. Make sure you're taking care of just yourself too. You know.
Yes, please do. Otherwise, you're gonna end up like Matt and I and have to figure it out from rock bottom and then
Yeah,
build back up. But hey, you
it
know
will
what?
gas you out.
Yeah. So we've been there. We look like the Mario Kart where the character kind of starts going the wrong direction and the screen says wrong way.
Yeah,
I've felt that a lot in my life. Like I don't
me
know how to
too.
turn the right way, and all the cars are passing me and hitting me with different things. So just to end on a funny note, obviously Mario Kart, great reference there. But just make sure you're going the right way and that you're being kind to yourself today. And as we end all of our podcasts with, just make sure to stop, take five, take a breath, and make today the best version of that day. All right, thanks for listening to today's episode of Just Call Dad.